And I understand that your the other founder and co-owner is your sister.
Yes.
Okay. And so why did you and your sister want to niche down in a brick and mortar to romance only?
Because that's the books that we love. We are lifelong romance readers. My older sister's name is Bea. She's 2 years older than me. We are not twins.
Okay. Look a lot alike, I
We
saw.
do. She has more hair than I do, but
Hi, Bookaholics. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Leah Koch, who is the co-owner and co-founder of the Ripped Bodice Bookstore. Leah, welcome to the Bookaholic podcast.
thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Okay, so I came to know of the Ripped Bodice because I think I was listening to a podcast and they happened to mention it, and I think it was Book News. They were talking about your move also, or additional store to the East Coast in Brooklyn. And I was just really intrigued because I did not know there was a romance only bookstore in the United States. And that just totally intrigued me that someone, opened a store for romance only. So I was just totally intrigued.
Thank you.
Yes.
We are no longer the only all romance bookstore. There's actually a couple of others now, but when we opened, we were the first one in the United States. There was one other we knew of in Australia.
Oh, okay. I guess I was thinking just mainly the States, where I try to get around. And it's in the LA, right? The original store is in LA.
Correct. Yes. Our original location is in the neighborhood of LA called Culver City. And
Culver
we've been
City.
about 7.5 years there.
Okay.
And then our new location is in Park Slope, Brooklyn. And we've been open for 1 month.
1 month. I was gonna say like a couple of weeks, right?
Yes. I think Saturday is officially 1 month.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're brand new, and I'm currently.
Okay, so we'll get to the Park Slope location in just a little bit. I was in Los Angeles back in April. My son lives out there, and I always try to go into bookstores wherever I am. And I think I was in a place called Book Soup. And then when I had learned about your bookstore, I was like, oh gosh, I didn't realize. But Culver City, I guess my son hasn't yet mentioned Culver City. So I guess that just was not on my radar to go to that area. But it will be the next time I'm out there in LA. I got to check out the store. Well, I will add to my listeners that not only is the Ripped Bodice, it's also a female-owned and queer-owned bookstore. So we give applause for all of our marginalized groups to being owners of bookstores. So yay, hooray for that. So, and I understand that your the other founder and co-owner is your sister.
Yes.
Okay. And so why did you and your sister want to niche down in a brick and mortar to romance only?
Because that's the books that we love. We are lifelong romance readers. My older sister's name is Bea. She's 2 years older than me. We are not twins.
Okay. Look a lot alike, I
we
saw.
do. She has more hair than I do, but we love romance. That is always what we've loved to read. And we sort of couldn't believe that there wasn't a romance bookstore in the United States.
Okay.
Especially given how many other genre bookstores there are, particularly comic bookstores. And we felt like by choosing that really specific niche, it would, instead of limiting us, like people might expect, it would in fact allow us to stand out and be unique and have a real piece that we felt people were looking for.
Yes, yes. Well, that's like one of the crowning jewels of marketing is to find a niche. And I knew that played a very important part with online businesses, but I really wasn't thinking about that with brick and mortar businesses, because it's so much more expensive to get involved into a brick and mortar business, and it's taking quite a chance. But apparently it has definitely worked for you. Now, within your niched down bookstore, there's further niches, I would think. Like if I were to go in, maybe I would see historical romance, queer romance. What all niches would I see within that genre?
Yeah, so when you walk into our store, as opposed to, most bookstores that have romance, there's a romance section. So you would have Jennifer Ashley Scottish historicals next to Jennifer Ashley werewolf romances. In our store, they're not next to each other.
Right.
So we have large sections that we divided. So we have historical, contemporary, paranormal, erotica, young adult, and LGBTQ.
Right.
Those are kind of our big sections.
Right.
And we also have a section called the everything else section, where we say no HEA, no after guarantee. So that's kind of like the entire rest of the normal bookstore. So a little smattering of regular fiction, nonfiction, memoirs, just that we think people would be interested in.
Right.
Our big categories are historical, contemporary, paranormal, and erotic.
Right. Okay. Good. Okay. So now let me tell you about me and romance. If you listen to my very first podcast, you hear me talk about how romance is not my jam, that historical fiction is my jam, etc. And it's because, I grew up with my mother and two sisters. They were big readers of the Harlquin romances. My sisters are like 20 plus years older than me. And so I grew up with all of them with their heads buried into these little tiny Harlquin romances, and so one day I finally gave up and I said, okay, I'm going to read one of these Harlquin. I was reading Stephen King and all this kind of stuff. So I said, well, I am just going to give up and I'm going to try one of these Harlquin romances, because we had shelves and shelves of Harlquin romance. So I picked one, read it. I think it was a stereotypical doctor, nurse kind of thing. And then I kept reading and kept reading and kept reading. And I was almost to the end. There was still no kiss. And it was maybe a kiss on the last page and the end. And I thought, this is the most boring thing I've ever read in my life. And so that spurred my dislike for romance. And it was just flat. And then I thought, okay, so surely there's sappy coming next. And I just did not want to read that kind. It was no excitement there whatsoever. But I'll tell you, recently, I was in a big box bookstore and I picked up a copy of the Billionaire series. The Billionaire, it's kind of like Disneyland. It's Laura Asher. Yeah, the Dreamland Billionaires.
Oh yeah. I was like,
yes.
Yes. I know exactly.
Yes. So I picked up a copy called Terms and Conditions. And I enjoyed it. But it wasn't flat. The couple in that book had great sex. They had great sex, and it was no waiting to page 300 before they kissed each other on the cheek. I loved it. And so I picked up the second book. So I've got the second book.
I'm so glad to hear that.
And I can't wait to read it. So, and I think I even bought it in Europe. I think I was in London when I bought this copy, because I was like, oh, whenever I see this book, I've got to get it. It'll be great to read on my trip. So I've turned, I turned around with
Excellent.
romance. And I'm glad to see that, there's so much. I would love to go to your bookstore for the fact that I love historical fiction. So I would love to see that paired with some romance as well. Now, let me ask you this, going back to the niches. Is there such a thing as maybe like romantic mystery?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Generally, people call it romantic suspense,
Oh,
which
okay.
includes,
any sort of thrillers or crime related. Maybe the people are solving some sort of crime or involved enforcement. It's definitely a niche that people enjoy.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And I'll just say about your story, first of all, it's totally fine if you don't like romance. It is not for everyone, and that is okay. But I think you are such a great example of you have to figure out what you like. So the first thing you're describing is what we call a slow burn. So they're not gonna touch or kiss for a very, very long time. And some people like that, but it's you might want something a little faster pace.
Yeah, a little racier.
Exactly. So, I really encourage people to have exactly the experience you had, which is try different tones, different pieces. The genre is so vast. And I if you don't like your first attempt, give it another tries.
Right.
If you don't like it after that, that's totally fine. But don't judge the whole genre by one.
Correct. By one tiny Harlequin romance that was probably written in 1985.
Sure.
Well, now, what would you say? Who would you say? Well, let's talk about the imprints of the romance books, because, like I was just mentioning, Harlequin. That was to me, I'm sure it wasn't, but to me, that was the only producer of romance. So tell us how the industry has blossomed from Harlequin Romance.
Yeah. So first of all, they're still around. What you're talking about is what we call a Harlequin series romance.
A Harlequin
series.
Okay. Yes.
And series is, I don't mean it in the terms of like book 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
It's a designation of the size and length of the books that they're publishing. So they're the real tiny ones.
Yes.
And they're usually like 150 pages maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And they are published within very specific Harlequin lines.
Okay.
So they have a Harlequin medical romance line.
Oh.
They publish like 4 to 6 months, all within that medical romance. And if you look at the books, they're very visually distinct, like they say, medical romance. And then they have Harlequin romantic suspense. They have a whole romantic suspense line.
Oh.
They have a bunch of inspirational lines, Christian
yes.
line.
Yes.
So it's very I guess regimented and specific in terms of what they're looking for and what you are writing.
Oh.
So it does still exist, but I think it's less what most modern romance sort of think of when they think about romance.
Right.
I think a lot of people subscribe to those lines, delivered to them, and you can buy them in places like Walmart or but most major publishers have a romance line, if not more than one.
Okay.
So, for example, this is stop me if this is getting boring, but
no.
HarperCollins is one of the big publishers, so they own Harlequin.
Oh, they own Harlequin. Okay.
Yes. So they publish Harlequin series,
right?
And they also own Avon, which is a major romance publishing line.
Right.
They're owned by the same people, but they're basically separate.
Yes.
And Avon is publishing things like mass market historical romances, and then a lot of trade paperback, which is bigger size, contemporary romances. So it just depends on the publisher, and then you look at the other largest publisher, which is Harlquin Romance.
Right.
They have Berkeley is their romance line.
Okay.
And then they also
go ahead.
publish like some romance in different lines. It becomes more of a insider baseball thing, but it's mainly about the editors and the publicity team working on those specific lines.
Right, exactly. Well, I just wanted to bring about if there was anybody else out there like me that grew up with the Harlequin romances, that there are other publishing imprints.
Oh yeah,
and you're not reading romance and you want to get into romance.
Yeah,
there's other avenues other than Harlequin that you can go down those roads. Now, who would you say is the Michael Jordan, Meryl Streep of romance right now?
Okay, so when you say that, I'm someone who's been writing for a really long time and is, at the top of their game. If we're comparing them to Meryl Streep. So I would say Nora Roberts still has tremendous power.
And yes, I do know that name, definitely. I mean, she's got 1,000 books like at the drugstore right now.
Absolutely. And she's got like 3 books a year. She's not even that old because she started writing when she was very young.
Oh, wow.
Beverly Jenkins will always be one of the queens of historical romance. She just has been writing fantastic books for so long and still maintains that quality. And then if you're thinking of maybe some newer, maybe not their first book, but haven't been writing quite as long as people have. I think Kennedy Ryan is a absolute star and has been increasing in popularity. Open. And Emily Henry is another thing.
Oh yeah.
Right now, you will find her books many places.
Yes. And Beverly Jenkins. I'm writing these names down because I'm trying to get some more selfishly for myself, but also for my audience. Yes, and I'm definitely familiar with all these writers. I'm not as familiar with Kennedy Ryan, but I will look her
fantastic contemporaries. They're very emotional. They're very grounded in emotions and they're wonderful.
Okay, wonderful. Now, there was another set of books though that I did read when I was younger. These are old school names, and I'm going to throw them out at you. Judith Krantz, Jackie Collins, Barbara Taylor Bradford. Those old school names, and I call them the Jetsetter writers. They had a lot of jet set, rags to riches stories, and after you threw away the rags, you were in Paris and Istanbul and the Caribbean, and you were just all over the place. So I did enjoy those books. Those books opened up a whole new world for me as a preteen to teen reading. And, I don't think my mother knew I was reading all those books because some of those books had lots of good sex in those as well. But were they romance writers or just jet set, or how would you term those?
I think it's a little bit, the line gets a little blurry. We can talk about what makes something a romance novel, which is you really only need two things, which are essential love story and a happy ending.
Oh, okay.
So the central part, when you start talking about things like women's fiction, which I don't really like that term because there's no such thing as women's fiction, but if you can take out the love story and there's still enough of the left, it probably tends more towards the straight fiction side of things.
Okay.
We're really looking for the romance front and center. But even more important than that is it has to have a happy ending. There's no way around that. People try to get around it, but you can't.
Right, because then there's no romance.
It does not mean they have to be married with a baby.
No.
Maybe they decide to adopt a dog and move in together.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
But they do have to be together.
Got you. Even if it's just dating. And even if it's just you've come to the conclusion that the couple is dating and happy with their flaws and their whatever.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I think with these books that you're talking about, it would depend on if they were together at the end of the book.
Right. Correct. And I'd have to certainly go back a long way to see about that. But okay, that's a good definition.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people get that.
There is actually a third thing which I sort of invented myself, or just added myself from a more of a bookseller's perspective, which is romance is a self-selecting genre.
Okay.
Meaning the publisher and the author have to basically opt in to calling it a romance.
Because
there are books that meet those two criteria, but the author doesn't want to sell it as a romance novel, which is fine. Like, you get to make your own decision. And there are marketing differences. You can look at novels that are packaged to be like very literary fiction versus something sold as a romance novel, and they do look different.
Right. Got you. Well, one of the things that outside of your different type of bookstore, I was pleased that you did an annual diversity report in romance genre. And I will tell you, going back to my Harlquin Romance experience, the cover of those books was always a white couple, a man and a woman on the cover of the book. And I never, ever during those times saw, certainly I didn't see a Black couple or an Asian couple. You definitely weren't going to see two men, and you definitely weren't going to see two women. And so I just like the way that, at least from the book cover perspective, that you see a diverse group of people involved in romance. Everybody has romance, and I think this one particular book, I think it's called Red, White, and You, or Blue. It's two men on the cover, and I think they even now have they're on a streaming service. That it's been turned into a movie, and it's on a streaming service. So romance,
Red, White, and Royal Blue.
Royal Blue.
Okay. Kristen.
Yes.
And the movie came out about 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Yes. So, it's come a long way, but I'm sure we still have a long, long way to go, because I was reading some of the percentages, and it was still very low. It was maybe even less than 20%, with the diversity. So what made you and your sister want to conduct an annual report?
So I'll just explain a little bit for if people aren't aware. You can go on our website, rippedbodice.com, and there's a button that says the long name. Ripped Bodice State of Racial Diversity in Romance Publishing Report. And you can look at it. So when we transitioned from being, regular readers to being involved in the industry, I had a much larger picture. If you're just a reader, you obviously seek out what you like, and you're not necessarily aware of every single book that a publisher is putting out.
Right.
And I started getting to know authors and working with them, and they had been doing advocacy for literal decades, trying to for, in particular, racial diversity in romance publishing. And I, as I was watching this, the dominant narrative from publishers was we're working on it, and we're doing better.
Okay.
And I am very literal and data focused.
Right.
And I said, I feel like there's a way to prove if that's true or not. And
Mhm.
I wanted to be able to offer something to these authors who had already been on the ground for decades, and just give them another tool and really move the conversation beyond the point of, is this an actual problem?
Right.
We were still stuck there.
Right, right, right.
So all we do is count. We count the number of books that the 20 largest romance publishers put out a year.
Okay.
And then we count the number of those books that are written by non-white authors.
Got you.
And we generate one single number, the percentage of their books that are published by non-white people.
Right.
And so when we started doing that, I think it led to, not to sound dramatic, but publishers not being able to lie anymore.
Correct.
Because if you say you're doing better, well, then that number is going up.
Right.
If it's going down, then you're lying.
Right. Correct.
So it is not a perfect, system by any means. It has a lot of limitations, but I think it at least serves as a starting point.
Right.
And I think totally agree with what you're saying, which is, in my opinion, numbers are still a bit pathetic.
Mm-hmm.
They have improved, which is good, but unfortunately, when you're starting from a basement, your improvement results in it still being a bit pathetic. So there is still so much work to do.
Yes.
And we only look at racial diversity. I think there's tremendous room in all different other kinds, whether that's sexuality, or religion, or disability representation. But this is our small contribution.
Well, and I think that's wonderful. And that's another thing that attracted me to want to talk to you today. Now, so where do you think this problem is stemming from? So do you think that it is we have a pool of, say, Black writers that's waiting over here, tons and tons of people, but they can't get past the gatekeepers at the publishing house? Or do we not have that pool of writers and the publishing house can't find the writers?
No.
Okay.
It's definitely A.
Okay.
It's definitely A. And we know that because so many writers from marginalized groups turn to self-publishing.
Yes.
There's a very robust self-publishing arm of romance.
Okay.
And there's fantastic work coming out of there because it's not a situation where your book isn't good enough to get published by a traditional publisher, so you end up publishing it.
Right.
It's a situation where you're writing about people that mainstream publishers think other people can't relate to or connect to or whatever.
Right.
And so you end up self-publishing. So we
Wow.
know that their work is there, and there are fantastic authors who have been with indie publishers, self-publishing, and then of course we don't know countless others who gave up because they weren't being allowed through the but it is not a content problem.
Okay. Got you. And do you, as far as your bookstore is concerned, how vast of an outreach do you all do? You have, of course, the reflection of the big 5 publishers, but do you feature some people who do independent publishing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We carry a lot of indie presses and self-published books because so many things are there, and that is often where the most representation is to be found.
Yes.
So yes, we absolutely think.
Well, that's one of the things, one of the reasons why I do my channel, because if you watch or listened, I don't really talk about the gigantic people that's on the New York Times bestsellers list every single week. I don't talk about them. We know who they are, but I don't speak about them because they have enough momentum and marketing and monies of their own. It's the other folks that I know are writing worthy books that have been hybrid published and have been independently published, self-published, that they need a voice. And I'm hoping to add to that for those folks. So
That's
yeah,
great.
definitely. I'm glad your store reflects those people because their books. There, I've read plenty of flops books or
Sure.
started plenty of flop books from the big five. And there's plenty of fine books out there that have been hybrid and self-published.
Absolutely.
I've read
And,
them.
there's bad books everywhere.
That's what-
You're gonna have, doesn't matter the genre or method of publishing. There's plenty of bad books.
Plenty of bad books. Well, now let's segue to your big move across country to the Park Slope, Brooklyn. Wow, that's a huge leap. So you didn't go safe and open up another store, maybe say in West Hollywood. You went all the way across country. So what's that about? Why did you pick that?
It's about a couple of things. It's mainly about this. That's my nephew.
Oh my goodness. Oh, so cute.
So my brother and sister-in-law live here in Brooklyn, and they have a 4-year-old, and then they just had another baby about 6 months ago. And I figured if I could be somewhere and be able to spend more time with them, and also open a new store, that would be both personally and professionally
The way to go.
enriching.
Yes.
I think mainly I just wanted a new adventure.
Mhm.
And the best thing about being around boss is you get to decide what that is.
That's exactly right.
I had lived in LA for 12 years, and I thought I want to try somewhere else.
Yes. Well, that's two totally different places.
Yes. But I also, it just opens up so many more opportunities for us in terms of the authors that we can have, because now have a base that's so much closer to half the country.
Right.
So it made sense from both professional and personal standpoints.
Yes. Well, thank you for telling me that, because I was just like, why? What would they do that for? But I see, and it makes perfect sense. And I just love the name of the bookstore, the Ripped Bodice. And I just keep thinking about those covers where the woman's what is it, a historical fiction, not a historical romance, and the woman's gown is partly off and the man is bare chested and their hair is blowing in the wind. And I just instantly think about that. It's the perfect name for a romance bookstore.
Thank you.
You couldn't do any better than that. I love it. Well, Leah, I really appreciate you for joining me today at the Bookaholic podcast. We will have all of your
so fun. Thank you.
Yes. Well, we'll have all of your information, links to your social media and your bookstore and the podcast show notes and in the description box on the YouTube channel. Leah, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yes. Questions answered about romance.